Hello and welcome to the European Football Show's Europa League preview. In the build-up to the upcoming game week, we are dissecting each fixture with an assortment of guests from around the world. In today's clip, we take a look at FC Porto versus SS Lazio, one of several exciting matchups awaiting us this upcoming Thursday in the first Europa League knockout round. To go into depth on FC Porto, we are joined by Breaking the Line's very own Zach Lowy, who specialises in Portuguese football and is the host of Portuguese football podcast Cortelinhas. How are things going, Zach?
Hey, thanks so much for having me on, Richard. It's a pleasure. And yeah, definitely make sure to check out, as you mentioned, my latest Cortelinhas podcast coming up today, this week, regarding Gil Vicente. Last week we did it on Aruca. The week prior to that, we did it on Porto. So really trying to expand our horizons this season on Cortelinhas.
I love podcasts where as many different clubs as possible are looked at in detail. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to catching up on the latest episodes of Cortelinhas. So obviously much of the talk in the last few days of FC Porto has centred around the sale of Ostrogoth star player Luis Diaz to Liverpool FC in the January transfer window. Zach, I know you've praised the 24-year-old Colombian winger as the best player in Portugal on both Cortelinhas and on our recent Breaking the Lines January transfer window special. So my question here is, just how do Porto replace such a crucial player such as Diaz?
Well, it really isn't easy for Porto. I mean, losing a player like Luis Diaz, but once again, as we've seen over the past few years with Joao Felix, with Nuno Mendes, so many players like this. You definitely notice that it's going to be unfeasible to maintain them, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the thing with Porto. It's always a challenge for them. I find when they're always having to replace players. I remember going back to my time as a student back there. I remember in 2011 when they had 2010, 2011 when they had Falcao and Hulk up front. And yeah, they've done so well over the years of managing to do it. But yeah, it always gets harder nowadays, doesn't it? When they're having to continuously just keep selling players. But yeah, there's such
absolutely. But I will mention that while we talked about the sales of Nuno Mendes and a few others, Joao Felix, but those were not in the middle of the season. So I definitely think you have to make that distinction. However, Porto, as I mentioned before on Cortelinhas, Porto's failure to sell a single player, they did not sell a single player this past summer. They did, sell Danilo Pereira, but that option had already been pre-agreed upon in, I believe, 2020. So they did not sell a single player, although they did loan out Diogo Leite to Braga with, quite frankly, an inflated option to buy it. I think 13 million, which I think is clear Braga will not exercise. So between failing to sell a single player, such as Tecatito Corona, between that as well as failing to qualify for the Champions League knockout round, when a team like Liverpool comes calling to give you a really a financial dose of freedom for at least the short term, I think it's very hard to resist if you're Pinto da Costa.
That's that. Yeah, that is a very good point. Yeah, just the lack of sales in the summer, and yeah, they're having to now basically accept Liverpool's offer. Yeah, it was a difficult dilemma for them, but I totally understand why they kind of had to do it. So yes, at the moment on the pitch, things are going quite rosy for Porto. Looking at it from the outside, they currently sit top of the Liga Primeira standings with 59 points in their 21 matches so far. They're still unbeaten in the league this campaign. Ostrogoth have a 6-point advantage over second place Sporting and a 12-point advantage over third place Benfica. Porto's Champions League campaign saw them finish third in a group dominated by Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, behind Atletico Madrid, however, ahead of AC Milan. So they drop, after third place finish, they drop into the Europa League knockouts where they have been drawn against SS Lazio. So Zach, how, as a whole, would you assess Porto's season so far, the fifth straight season in charge for coach Sergio Conceição?
Well, overall, I have to have very positive sensations if I am a Porto fan. Yes, Porto did fail in several respects, as we just discussed. financially, yes, they did fail to reach the Champions League knockout round in a heartbreaking match against Atletico Madrid, where they were, in my opinion, the better team. They had the better end of the chances, but they failed to put them away. I definitely think that you have to take that into account. However, since that heartbreaking game against Atletico, they have been perfect in the league. And apart from Luis Diaz, one player I want to mention who I think has been absolutely crucial in Porto's perfect streak is Vitinha, Vitor Ferreira, who was one of the biggest stars of Portugal's run to the U21 Euros final, where they lost to Germany last year. Him alongside Fabio Vieira, both of those players, as good as they were for Portugal, they're reaching that level at Porto, and I think that's going to be very crucial. Against the Lazio side that has shown to be really kind of in jeopardy of collapsing before it even started. Under I definitely think under Maurizio Sarri.
Yeah, I have to say, it's really quite impressive what Porto have managed to carve out there. I was actually quite shocked when I saw the table recently and saw the lead that they've managed to, carve out there. And yeah, because Ruben Amorim's drawn a lot of praise for the work he's done at Sporting. And obviously the crazy thing about all this is that Porto are the leaders of the Premier League, yet they're not in the Champions League knockout rounds yet. Sporting and Benfica are. But yeah, you have to give a lot of credit to what they've done recently in pulling out that lead over the competition. So, yes, the Europa League qualifying playoff round pits the Northern Portuguese outfit against Maurizio Sarri's SS Lazio side in what looks an even and very intriguing contest. So, Zach, I'll come back to you again here. What are the comparative strengths and weaknesses of this Porto side, would you say?
Well, I mean, with regards to the strengths, I definitely think that creativity from the midfield positions is definitely one of Porto's biggest strengths. We mentioned, earlier of both Vitinha and Fabio Vieira, both how crucial they have been, and a reason why Porto had no issues with allowing Sergio Oliveira. Let's remember, a starter for them last season, to leave to Roma without an option to buy. I believe I'm not sure if there's an option to buy attached, but that really shows you just how good they have been.
That's great. That's brilliant insight there from Zach. And now, yeah. And one last thing before we wrap up the Porto part of this Breaking the Lines Europa League special. I'd like a prediction from you, please, Zach. How do you think Porto will fare against the Roman heavyweights in this Europa League tie?
I have a feeling that Ciro Immobile is going to fire Lazio to a deep run. For me, I think he's just due one of those tournaments in Europe. I frankly can't remember the last time he had one of those, but he has been one of the most consistent, goal scorers in Europe over the past half decade or so. I have a feeling that he is going to help Lazio advance, and definitely going back to strengths and weaknesses. I think that defense is definitely one of probably Porto's biggest weakness, shall we say. Looking at Pepe, who has just returned last weekend, but really missed the past 2 months or so, I believe, with a muscle injury. Fabio Cardoso, who was brought from Santa Clara in the summer to kind of be the long-term replacement of Pep, has been decent, but still, not convincing of being the long-term option. Hence why they brought in Ruben Semedo. But Semedo, I believe, I don't see him getting many starting opportunities before this Lazio match. But I definitely think that Immobile could give their defense, like the Chancel Mbemba, who, despite having a good game at the weekend, has been kind of hot and cold this season. Had a very good 2021, but has kind of been off the ropes alongside similar situation, I might add, to Tecatito Corona. Both players, contracts set to expire in 2022. Porto managed to move on Jesus Corona to Sevilla before the January deadline. Porto, on the other hand, were unable to do so. So I definitely think that is that is a potential area of concern. Immobile against the Porto side.
Lovely. Yeah, as I just want to say, huge thank you to Zach there for all the lowdown on Porto, and yeah, that was the lowdown on Porto in their Europa League match, upcoming Europa League match against SS Lazio.
Thank you so much once.
So that was some fantastic insight there from Zach on the Porto side of things. And now we move on to the other side of the equation, Porto's opponents, SS Lazio. Now, the Roman Giants finished in second place in the Europa League group behind Galatasaray, but ahead of Olympique de Marseille and Lokomotiv Moscow. So to profile Lazio's chances, we are now joined by Italian football specialist and content producer for Breaking the Lines and Forza Italian Football, Vito Doria, based all the way out in Victoria State, Australia. Vito, how are things going?
Oh, I'm feeling good. It's summer here in Melbourne, so that's something. But yeah, I would really love to be in Europe one day and to be able to experience all the football in person. I haven't been since 2019, so I think I'm long overdue for a trip.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, that's the thing as well. Experience it in the flesh, live. I can imagine like it's all the way in Australia, New Zealand. I imagine getting up for games is wow. It's quite a lot of early kickoffs. Let's just say.
It's very draining and it wears you out after a while. I used to do it more when I was a teenager and I was more enthusiastic, but the older you get, it's not much fun. Hence why I would rather be at the stadium at the games. At least my body would be better adjusted.
Absolutely. So, Lazio. Let's go on to them right now. So Lazio, like so many other clubs in Italy last summer, they changed their manager. Lau Chilotti brought in veteran manager Maurizio Sarri after he took a year out of coaching following his sacking by Juventus at the end of the COVID-hit 2019-20 campaign. Lazio, half a season into Sarri's stewardship, currently sits sixth in Serie A, but remain firmly in what looks like a five-team scrap for fourth place in Serie A currently. And with that, obviously brings Champions League football for next season. So, Vito, Sarri, in his previous job at Napoli, really caught the attention of the whole footballing world with the attractive style of play he had the Neapolitan side playing. How has Sarri got Lazio playing so far? Is it a carbon copy of his time at Lazio, at Napoli, or have there been some variations?
I think there have been some variations, but more than anything else, I think the team's still having a bit of trouble adjusting to his methods. He does have some fine attacking options, such as Felipe Anderson, Ciro Immobile. They got Mattia Zaccagni from Hellas Verona, and Sergei Milinkovic-Savic is a superb midfielder. But the Spanish midfielder Luis Alberto is probably not having one of his greatest seasons, and there's been speculation for some time that he wants to leave the club. His relationship with the club hierarchy has been fractured for the last year or two, and I think that's also had some impact on the football pitch. I think this Lazio team does need further reinforcements if they do continue with Sarri beyond this season, because although there have been times where they've played some excellent football, we have not seen anywhere like what he's produced at Napoli. The football that Sarri's team played at Napoli was absolutely superb, some of the best they've ever seen in Serie A, or even throughout the whole of Europe, playing that 4-3-3 formation, a lot of quick passing, great exchanges in tight areas, but able to hit the ball long when possible, scoring goals for fun. So they were a joy. But I think this Lazio team, I think it's shown that despite having some good points in the team, there are still some weak spots, especially in defence. And when you play an attacking style of football, you still need that protection at the back, which Lazio have struggled with until, let's say, probably the last month or so, at least in the league, they showed a bit of improvement. But yesterday they did lose 4-0 to Milan in the Coppa Italia, so that's certainly a downside for the rear guard.
I've got to say at the moment, just looking at as a whole, Serie A at the moment as a collective, I certainly think is a league on the way back up. Definitely at the moment, that's for sure. I'm certainly looking forward to catching a lot more of it in the upcoming weeks. And I still remember that 2017-18 Napoli season where they came so close to winning the title. And Zari had them playing some absolutely unbelievable football. I still remember it so vividly. All the reports about it and everything like that. So on to Lazio's European campaign so far. The UEFA Cup Europa League is actually a competition the Roman outfit have never won. Their best result in it being runners-up to Inter Milan in the 1997-98 edition. So Vito, Lazio finished second in a group containing Galatasaray of Turkey, Olympique Marseille of France, and Lokomotiv Moscow of Russia. Could one say about Lazio's European campaign so far? Could you one say that whilst they did well to get out of a very tough-looking group on paper, there's probably tinged with that disappointment that they were unable to go on and win the group, which would have guaranteed a bye to the round of 16?
It would have certainly made things easier if they were able to win the group. I perhaps think that maybe Europe's probably not the highest thing on the priority list, but the way things have gone in the league, I would personally think that they should be having a better crack in Europe. Having an opponent like Porto will make things a lot harder because Porto are a well-seasoned team in European competitions. They've won this trophy twice. They did it once when it was formerly known as the UEFA Cup. And Lazio themselves, I think if they just put a bit more focus in it, it would be tough. But I think they might fancy themselves against Porto on the day, but on paper, Porto should be better. As for the group stage, that's where they should have done better because they could have avoided this situation, avoided such a tough opponent. And I think against the likes of Galatasaray and Marseille, although they weren't easy opponents, perhaps they should have been able to have beaten some of those teams on the night, especially Marseille. They were drawing so many games, it was quite absurd.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. And Thomas Strakosha, I saw that error he made against Galatasaray in the first game. It was a total howler. And you never know if that didn't go in. Maybe Lazio might have won this group. And like you said, this situation that they find themselves in at the moment might have been avoided. Because it looks an intriguing tie-up against Porto. So huge thanks there for the insight, Vito. Some great insight there. So overall, then, what would you say are the comparative strengths and weaknesses of this Lazio team?
The strengths, like I pointed out just before, are mostly in the attacking part. The front three of Ciro Immobile, Felipe Anderson, and the Spanish veteran Pedro, the main strengths, and then they have Zaccagni that they can bring off the bench. So that's where they're quite strong. And the midfield, at least on paper, with Milinkovic-Savic, Luis Alberto, they got players who know how to create chances. And Lucas Leiva brings valuable experience. He's probably not technical enough for Sarismo or Sarri, but he's still a good player. And Sarri's started to use Danilo Cataldi a bit more. And he was a midfielder that was perhaps not utilised often enough at Lazio or even at previous clubs when he was on loan. But this season, he's been getting more playing time, and I think he probably offers a bit more on the ball than what Lucas Leiva does. In goal and defensively, that's where they're extremely vulnerable. Aside from Francesco Acerbi, they are very vulnerable in defence. There are players like Luis Felipe and Stefan Radu who are serviceable players, but they're not elite defenders. They're not even among the best in Serie A. Although Luis Felipe has been linked with moves elsewhere, he's been linked with Inter a few times, but he's not someone who I reckon would walk into the Inter defence, and they already have a strong defence too. So Luis Felipe is not someone that I would depend on, and he's had injury issues as well. The fullback positions, they've bought Husai, who is familiar with Sarri's tactics at Napoli, but he can be a bit hit and miss. And you've got the fullbacks such as Maricic and Lazzari. Lazzari is more of a wing back for teams that play in a 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. Maricic, solid performer, reliable, but again, not someone who's part of the cream of the crop in Serie A. Then in goal, you pointed out Strakosha with his error against Galatasaray. He's improved in recent weeks, but he too could be out the door at the end of the season. He does not seem to be interested in renewing his contract. And then I think it's time for Peperino to retire because he played in that Coppa Italia loss against AC Milan. And whenever I've watched him play, he's been full of errors. So although he's another one that was familiar with Sarri's tactics at Napoli, I think it's probably time he should actually call it quits on his career because the errors are just coming thick and fast for him.
Lovely stuff there, Vito. Lovely stuff. So yeah, it's been great to have you on this Breaking the Line special. And there's just one last thing, if I may ask. I'd like you to give me a score prediction over the two legs for the upcoming Porto match for Lazio.
If I'd say on aggregate, I would say 4-2. I'd probably say 2-1 wins to Porto in both legs.
Brilliant stuff. Wow, that's a surprising prediction. I wasn't expecting that. I thought maybe a little bit more confidence, but yeah. Huge thank you very much, Vito, for your insight there. And that's your lowdown, ladies and gentlemen, on Porto versus Lazio in this Breaking the Lines Europa League special.